Aries, if lately you've felt like everything is pressing right into your deepest, most sensitive place, please slow down and listen carefully. This is not punishment, and it is not random. This is the moment when universal justice begins to move. When what has been hidden is preparing to come into the light. There are souls who only awaken their true strength when they are tested to the very edge. And Aries is one of them. In the next 30 minutes, you will begin to understand why the wounds that once brought you to your knees are quietly transforming into inner power, and why the universe has never turned its back on you. Not even once. If you are ready to step into this awakening, leave behind a quiet affirmation that you are willing to face the truth and trust in the fairness of the universe. That statement is not for me. It is a signal you send directly to the energy that has been guiding you all along. And to understand why all of this is happening for Aries at this exact moment, we need to return to your astrological origin, to the place where your raw, primal strength was born. Aries enters this world with a different heartbeat. Even when you were very young, there was something in your eyes that refused to stay still. Not competitiveness, not the need to win, but a quiet knowing that you must keep going, keep moving forward, live fully aligned with the truth burning softly inside you. That energy is not loud, but it constantly pushes you to act while others are still thinking. And because of that, the Aries path is rarely smooth. Mars, the force that rules you, does not give you endless patience the way it does others. What it gives you instead is the flash of will, the strength to rise. The moment you fall, the courage to say, enough. When truth has been crossed, you were never meant to endure quietly for too long. Your soul is designed to react when something is wrong, even if the price is loneliness. There are times when you feel like you're swimming upstream. You say what others avoid. You move when others are waiting for a safe signal. And when the storm arrives, you are often the one at the front, taking the first impact. Not because you want to be a hero, but because you cannot turn away from what you know is right. If you've ever lived that reality, you know the feeling. Strong and empty at the same time. The quiet weight Aries often carries. Very few people see everything you've endured. The world sees the results, but not the nights when you wondered if you were pushing too far, if you were making life harder for yourself. You can smile quickly, you can stand back up quickly, but that doesn't mean you didn't hurt. It means you refused to let pain define who you are. You keep moving because deep inside, you know stopping was never an option. If something in you is steering right now, if this feels familiar, allow yourself to acknowledge it. You don't need to prove how strong you've been. Just know you've walked through more than most people realize. And if you feel called, leave a small sign that you're still here, still listening, still moving with this energy. Every presence matters, even if it's only a single line of words. Aries is often misunderstood as impulsive, but the truth is, you react quickly because you sense quickly. You feel instability in the air before it fully forms. You see cracks in relationships before they collapse. And when you speak, sometimes it's already too late to turn back. That earns you the label of stubborn. But beneath it is the intuition of a soul, born to warn, to initiate, to ignite change. You may have wished you could slow down like others, hesitate longer, weigh things more carefully, but every time you try to suppress your true nature, something inside you tightens. Because when you don't act, your soul grows restless. When you don't speak, your energy becomes heavy. You were not born to live compressed. The world needs souls like Aries, even when that same world makes you feel out of place. Great paths are never opened by the crowd. They begin with one individual, willing to step forward, to take risks, to be misunderstood. And so many times, that individual is you. You may not have named that role, but your soul has always known exactly what it's doing. If you've ever felt that you gave too much, that you were always the one initiating, the one keeping the fire alive for things that eventually burned out, pause for just a moment, not to blame anyone, but to see yourself more clearly. Because sometimes, long-term strength can make you forget that you, too, deserve to be held. And in the moment you realize that, A new layer of awareness begins to open inside you. There's a truth that isn't spoken about very often. Pioneering souls must learn how to live with being misunderstood. You can inspire others, but not everyone stays long enough to say thank you. You can open the path, but not everyone remembers who stepped there first. If that has ever made you sad, that's completely natural. You are not a machine. You are human, with a very real heart. And if at this point, you're wondering why your path has held so many challenges, hold that question just a little longer, because it's not random that a soul carrying the energy of beginnings must pass through deep friction. Some things only activate when you reach your limits. Some understandings only arrive after you've stood very close to exhaustion. If these words touch you, leave a response. It doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just honest. That's not just interaction. It's how you claim your presence in this space, and it's how you connect with other Aries souls, listening in the same rhythm. Because the moment you begin to recognize the true nature of the strength you carry, another question appears. A question many Aries only dare to face after traveling very far. If I'm this strong, why do some things still hurt me so deeply? And it is at that tender point that the next chapter begins to reveal itself. There is something very gentle, yet very profound, about Aries that few people are patient enough to notice. Behind the strong exterior, the decisiveness, the constant forward motion, you carry a remarkably soft heart, not fragile, not weak, but a heart that feels quickly, trusts quickly, and gives quickly. And over time, that becomes your most vulnerable place. You are not weak because you get angry. Aries anger is often surface level, a flash that ignites and fades quickly. What stays longer is the quiet pain, the moment you realize you trusted someone who didn't share your values, the moment you gave your heart, believing they would stand for truth as you do, only to watch them choose silence or the easier path. And perhaps deepest of all, the moment you look back and realize how many battles you've walked through alone. You trust quickly, not because you're naive, but because your soul is familiar with honesty. When you speak truth, you expect the same. When you protect something, you assume it deserves protection. You aren't built for hidden agendas or layered intentions. You enter relationships directly and expect directness in return. And when reality doesn't match that, the collision is quiet, but very deep. There are seasons when you don't realize how tired you are. You're still standing, still working, still caring for others, still being the support. But inside, a small part of you begins to tighten, not from fear, but from disappointment. The disappointment of realizing that not everyone fights for truth, that not everyone places integrity above personal gain. And that realization cuts Aries deeper than any failure ever could. You are so strong that you forget you also need protection. You're used to getting up after every fall, so much so that you forget how to reach out and let someone hold your hand, not because you don't need it, but because you've grown accustomed to expecting nothing. You learn to take care of yourself, to heal yourself, to keep going alone. And slowly, fighting alone became a habit, even though it was never what your soul truly wanted. If your heart sinks slightly as you listen, let that feeling exist. You don't need to become strong again immediately. Sometimes, simply admitting that you're tired, that you're sad, that you're disappointed, is a very deep form of courage. And if you're willing, leave a few words, not to complain, but to say, you've been through something, and you're still here. Your presence matters, even in your quietest moments. There's a paradox that defines Aries. You are fiercest when protecting others, yet hesitant when setting boundaries for yourself. You'll stand up to injustice, you'll take losses to protect what you believe in. But when it's time to say enough to what's hurting you, you pause, not because you don't know where the line is, but because you keep hoping things will change. If you try just a little longer, and then one day, that effort reaches its limit, not with an explosion, but with prolonged silence, you begin to pull inward. You speak less. You observe more. You no longer trust quickly. Others may think you've changed, become colder, more distant, but only you know. This shift came from many moments where your heart was touched without being valued. Your soul doesn't actually want to shut down. You're learning to protect the fire within, so it isn't blown out too easily. Your kindness hasn't disappeared. It's simply more selective. Your courage hasn't weakened. It's just placed where it truly belongs. And this is a transition not every Aries is ready to walk through. If recently you've felt like you've changed a lot, pause and ask yourself, what shifted me? A relationship that ended, a quiet betrayal, or simply exhaustion from giving too much for too long. If it feels safe, write it down. You may be surprised to discover you're not as alone as you once thought, because so many other Aries are standing at this same turning point. They're learning to tell the difference between courage and blind sacrifice, between kindness and self-erasure, between fighting for what's right and trying to save something that no longer belongs to them. These lessons don't come from books. They come from lived experience, from real moments, from real life, and sometimes from real pain. You may have blamed yourself for trusting too quickly, for loving too honestly, for standing too long in places that no longer nourished you. But if you look back now, with a softer gaze, you'll see those choices weren't wrong. They came from a heart that never intended to harm anyone. And the fact that you're learning to change is not a betrayal of who you are. It's how you allow that essence to survive longer, to live healthier, to remain whole. If you're in this phase of life, give yourself permission to slow down just a little, not to retreat, but to listen. Listen to your body, your emotions, the quiet signals your soul sends you every day. You'll begin to notice that things which once caused pain are now becoming the foundation for a new kind of stability. And it's right there, in that tender place, the one you once believed was your weakest, that something very different is quietly forming. Not loudly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. A shift in how you see the world, in what you choose to stand for, in who you allow into your life. When this lesson is fully realized, you feel a subtle, yet powerful, change in the energy around you. Stay with that feeling just a little longer, because the moment you truly understand your most vulnerable place, the universe begins to respond in its own way, not with noise, but with precision. And that's when a new chapter prepares to open. There comes a moment in the Aries journey when your questions shift. You stop asking about others and start questioning the order of life itself. You look back at what you've endured, what you've given, the pain you carried, in silence, and you ask quietly, is this all truly fair? That question doesn't come from resentment. It comes from human exhaustion. And it's in that moment, when you stop searching for answers outside yourself, that a different understanding of karma begins to emerge. In many cultures, karma is misunderstood as punishment, but through a universal lens, and especially within Western spiritual understanding, karma doesn't resemble judgment. It functions more like balance than a verdict. Cause and effect doesn't ask who you are. It doesn't take sides. It doesn't rush to conclusions. It simply records, quietly, precisely, and waits for the right moment to respond. For a long time, you may have felt like you endured too much, without seeing any sign of return. You stayed silent when misunderstood. You withdrew when things became distorted. You chose not to respond, knowing it would only prolong the cycle of harm. And somewhere inside, a quiet doubt formed. Was this patience meaningless? But there is a gentle truth you only discover when you finally slow down. The universe misses nothing, not even tears. No, one says, what you carried in silence didn't disappear. It didn't dissolve into nothing. It was remembered as energy, as information. as part of a current, waiting to be balanced. Not in the way you expected, but in the way most necessary for the soul's growth. Aries struggles with this delay. You're wired for quick action, clear results, immediate feedback, but universal justice doesn't operate on the ego's timeline. It moves at the pace of truth, and truth, to stand on its own, sometimes needs time. Some things, revealed too early, only create more chaos. Some truths, appearing at the right moment, carry enough weight to shift everything. You may have watched those who hurt you continue as if nothing happened, still smiling, still moving forward, still supported. And in those moments, you may have wondered if believing in fairness was naive. But look closer. Not with your eyes, with your awareness. Energy doesn't lie. What goes unresolved within will eventually surface without. Universal justice is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't require witnesses. It unfolds naturally, like a tree leaning toward light, like a river finding its way to the sea. Truth has a tendency to emerge, not to humiliate, but to return things to their rightful place. And when that happens, many Aries realize they don't need to do anything other than keep living truthfully. There were moments you wanted to scream, to reclaim what was lost, to be acknowledged as not wrong, but you chose silence. Not from weakness, but from a deep, instinctive knowing that not every battle requires words or action. Some battles are won by refusing to lose yourself, and that is enough. If you've sensed a subtle shift recently, pay attention. You may be sleeping more deeply, or waking with heavier thoughts. You may feel lighter after releasing something once essential. You may no longer react as strongly to what once triggered anger. This is not indifference. This is balance, reestablishing itself from within. The universe doesn't need you to prove you're right. It only asks that you remain honest with yourself. When you stop forcing outcomes, when you allow events to unfold naturally, you hand control back to a greater order. And that order, though slow, is always precise. In a society accustomed to quick judgment and rushed conclusions, this way of unfolding can feel frustrating, but it carries a profound human value. Justice doesn't need to tear someone down to lift another up. It doesn't create winners or losers. It simply reveals truth and allows each person to face their part within it. You may notice this in how your relationships change. Those no longer aligned quietly drift away, often without explanation. New people arrive with a very different energy, softer, more respectful, not because you became better, but because you became more real. And truth has a pull all its own. If you're wondering now whether you imagined this shift, listen inward. Does the air feel different? Are there things that once weighed heavily no longer occupying as much space in your mind? Are questions that once haunted you no longer demanding immediate answers? This isn't avoidance, it's deep acceptance. If you feel it, share it. You don't need to explain everything. You don't need long words. Just say that you feel the change. When you write that down, you're not only speaking to others, you're confirming to yourself that you're stepping into a new chapter. And very often, that simple sharing becomes the moment someone else realizes they are not alone in this experience. There is something important many Aries only realize after they've traveled far. Universal justice is not about others paying a price. It's about you no longer carrying the weight of the past. When the truth is revealed, or when you become calm enough that you no longer need it to be revealed, that's when real freedom begins. And that freedom doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go at the right moment. Because of this, many Aries begin to redefine what response truly means. At first, you might believe fairness means the one who did wrong must suffer. But the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. The greatest form of justice is when you are no longer bound to what happened, when you no longer need someone to understand, to apologize, to admit anything, in order for you to keep living. If you're standing at that edge now, half holding on, half letting go. Be gentle with yourself. There's no need to force yourself to be above it or over it too quickly. The universe doesn't measure growth by speed. It measures it by sincerity, and every step you take from a place of honesty is fully acknowledged. In the days ahead, you may witness changes you once hoped for, but stopped waiting for. You may hear truths you no longer need to prove anything, or nothing dramatic may happen at all, yet your heart feels calmer. That, too, is a form of justice, quiet, but deeply real. And right here, in this moment, as you begin to understand that justice is not a blow, but a reordering, another misunderstanding starts to surface for many Aries. When things are returned, it's easy to label that as revenge. But are those two things really the same? And from this question, another essential part of the story begins to unfold. There is a very quiet moment in the Aries journey when you suddenly realize you no longer want to react, not because you've healed everything, not because you've forgotten what happened, but because one day, you wake up and the urge to prove something to anyone is simply gone. That moment is delicate, hard to name, but if you've touched it, you know, it's the moment your strength moves to a higher level. In a more mature phase of Mars, energy no longer explodes the way it used to. It doesn't rush forward instinctively. It doesn't strike back just to asser existence. Instead, it settles. It becomes disciplined, directed, deep. Action no longer comes from anger, but from clarity. And many Aries only reach this state after experiencing enough pain to understand that reaction is not always power. You once believed fairness meant being recognized, being repaid, having someone say, "You were right," but later you realize the deepest wounds didn't come from loss. They came from trying to explain yourself to those unwilling to listen. You spoke so much, you did so much, hoping truth would be understood. But some people aren't looking for truth, they're looking for convenience. And when you truly understand that, another door opens. Sacred return doesn't arrive the way you imagined. It doesn't look like retaliation. It doesn't wear the costume of loud victory. It arrives quietly, deeply, when you begin living in alignment with your light, without checking who's watching, who's judging, who believes, and who doesn't. The highest response for Aries is not making others regret. It's no longer allowing them to define your worth. There is an indescribable relief when you no longer feel the need to prove anything. You don't need to retell old stories, hoping someone will finally understand. You don't need to ask, why did they do that? You don't need to be right in the eyes of someone who never stood with you to begin with. In that silence, there is a very private victory. No one hands it to you, but you know exactly what it costs to earn. You begin to see that true power is not the ability to hurt others the way you were hurt. True power is refusing to let pain turn you into someone you don't want to be. Sometimes, not acting is the bravest action of all. Not out of fear, but out of knowing that some battles aren't worth fighting. Not because you're weaker, but because you are far stronger than before. The quiet success of Aries is rarely displayed. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need an audience. It shows in the way you walk more steadily, speak less, but with weight. In the way you stay loyal to your values, even when no one applauds. In the way you let your light exist naturally, without forcing anyone to see it. And that light, when strong enough, inevitably exposes what is not real. You may once have believed you needed a clear ending to old stories, an apology, an acknowledgement, a visible moment of fairness. But maturity teaches you that not every story needs a written ending. Some chapters close in silence, and that silence is the gentlest ending you can give yourself. If your heart softens as you listen, let that feeling spread. This isn't coldness, it's calm. After weathering enough storms, you haven't lost your fire. The fire simply no longer burns you. It becomes guidance, warmth, light. without destruction. And that is a form of strength few ever touch. We often confuse silence with defeat. But for a mature Aries, silence is a conscious choice. You know when to speak and when to walk away. You don't need to prove that you're above anything. You only need to be honest with what you feel. And when you stop being pulled into old cycles, you create space for what truly deserves you. If you feel this shift within yourself, allow it to unfold completely. No rushing, no comparison. Every Aries matures in their own rhythm, but the shared moment is this: when you stop reacting from the wound and begin acting from clarity. That's when you are no longer carried by circumstance, but choosing how to stand within it. If these words touch you, leave a small sign that you're here, listening, walking with this message, not to take sides, not to defend anyone, but to spread the peace you're slowly beginning to find again. Because when you share, someone out there, someone who is tired, may suddenly realize they are not fighting alone. And sometimes, just knowing that is enough for a soul to keep going. Because when Aries learns, they don't have to strike to prove their strength. Another door opens, a door to a larger contribution, a deeper role, a meaning that rises beyond personal stories. And this is the moment the universe begins to ask you a different question. Not how much you can endure, but what you will do with the light you carry. And that is where the next part of your journey is waiting. After everything Aries has been through, a truth becomes clear. Softly, yet undeniably. You were never born just to survive trials for yourself alone. Every scratch you carry, every time you rose from the rubble, has never been meaningless. It has quietly shaped you into someone who can illuminate a path for others, even if you never intended to become a leader. In astrology, Aries is the beginning of the Zodiac wheel. And that's not only about time, it's about the soul. You arrive to initiate motion, to break stagnation, to remind the world there is always a next step, even when everything feels like it has stopped. Your leadership doesn't come from long advice or lofty speeches. It comes from action, from the way you stand up when others hesitate, from the way you choose truth in a world trained to hide. Maybe you've wondered why you've had to face so many challenges, why your path is rarely simple, why every time you finally catch your breath, another lesson appears. But if you step back far enough, you'll see it. Those hard seasons have refined you into a very particular kind of fire. Not a fire that burns everything around it, but a fire warm enough for others to come close when they feel lost. You didn't go through pain to become bitter. You didn't move through loss to seal your heart shut. If you're still here, still listening, still open, it's because deep inside you, there has always been one clear choice: to keep believing in what is right, even when that belief was tested. And that choice is what makes you a torch. Not because you're always bright, but because you refuse to let darkness consume you. You may not realize how much your story matters to someone else. You simply lived. You endured. You kept going. But you didn't see the eyes watching from a distance. You didn't see the people inspired by the way you refused to quit. You didn't see the souls who dared to keep walking because they knew someone out there had been afraid, had been hurt, and still stood up again. Your light doesn't have to be dazzling, it just has to be real. In a society where many people are pulled into the fear of being judged, the presence of an Aries, living in truth, as immense impact. You show others they don't have to be perfect to deserve a place here. They don't have to be strong every single day to be respected. You allow them to witness a human being, both brave and wounded, both steady and soft. And that creates a safe space for others to be themselves too. Sometimes you realize the change you create doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from small moments. One time you tell the truth about something you once feared. One time you stop pretending you're fine when you're not. One time you choose to listen, instead of reacting. Those moments, so ordinary on the surface, are where healing begins to spread, from you, to another, and then into circles you never expected. When one person becomes healthier, they carry that health into every space they enter, family, work, community. And when many individuals awaken, society begins to change too. Not through loud revolutions, but through subtle shift in how people treat each other. Aries plays a unique role in that process. Because you don't just talk about change, you embody it. There are days you feel tired of always being the one to clear the path. Days you wish you could live quietly, without carrying any extra meaning. Those feelings make sense. You don't owe the world anything, but if you choose to keep walking with your light, it isn't obligation. It's because you understand that light is also feeding you. You don't need to search for your purpose somewhere far away. It lives inside the smallest daily choices, in how you treat yourself after you make a mistake, in how you respond when faced with injustice, in how you stand for what is right, even when it brings no immediate reward. Every time you choose that, you move in alignment with your soul's current. If you feel a quiet, deep stirring right now, pause for un moment. Think of someone who entered your life during your hardest season, someone who helped you simply by being present, or by not leaving when you were at your weakest. And then ask yourself, if your story could become light for someone else, who would you choose to give it to? You don't have to answer immediately, just let the question rest in your heart, because when you begin to view your journey, not only through the pain you survived, but through the meaning it is creating, you step into a different phase. A phase where what you lived through doesn't belong only to you anymore. It becomes part of something larger. And at this point, the universe seems to grow quiet, as if to say, you're ready. You may never know every person your light has touched, but that doesn't make your light smaller. It still exists, it still spreads, it still guides quietly. And if you stayed all the way to this moment, it isn't random. Something in you is ready to receive the final message. A message for Aries souls who have traveled far enough to understand. True strength is not found in defeating someone, but in who you have become after everything. If you're here now, is listening to these final minutes, allow yourself to pause. No more thinking, no more analyzing, no more trying to understand with the mind. Just feel, because your presence in this moment is not an accident. It is a delicate resonance between your soul and what the universe has been whispering. You are standing in the right place, within the universe's order. Even if your path looks different from the crowd, even if you have doubted yourself, felt out of place, wondered why you had to endure so much, every step you've taken has meaning. No step was wasted, no pain was meaningless. Everything has been guiding you to where you need to be, to the version of you your soul is learning to become. You may not see the full picture yet. There may still be questions without clear answers, but that does not mean you're on the wrong path. There are seasons in life when all we need is the trust that we are still moving, even when we can't yet see the destination. And for Aries, that trust is not blind. It comes from something deep inside you, a strength that has lifted you up again and again. Even in moments when you believed you couldn't rise anymore. Let this affirmation stay with you, not as a sentence, but as a breath. You walk in truth, and universal justice walks with you. No rushing, no proving, just continue living in alignment with your light. Each day you do that, you become a little freer, a little lighter. If right now your heart feels softer, or you sense something familiar you can't quite name, trust that feeling. That is connection. You didn't hear these words out of simple curiosity. You heard them because a part of you is ready to close an old cycle and open a new way of seeing yourself. Not loudly, not dramatically, but truthfully. And if you choose to stay, not only with this video, but with your own journey, remember this: awakening is not a destination, it is a process. Sometimes clear, sometimes blurred, sometimes inspired, sometimes very quiet. All of it is valid. You don't need to become anyone else, only the version of yourself that is learning to live more deeply, more honestly, and more gently with who you are. Stay with this channel, with messages meant for the Aries soul, not to find answers instantly, but to walk alongside yourself on this path, because your awakening is not over. It has only just begun, in a way that is uniquely yours, beautifully right, and deeply worthy of honor.